Hello, this is our introduction to Advanced Applied Behavioral Analysis project report. My name is Austin Richter. I am 34 years old, about to be 35. I live in North Adams, Massachusetts. I work as the District Behavior Intervention Coordinator for a local public school system. I exercise about 2 to 3 times a week, and I like to lift weights and go on a walk or a run.
Hey, my name is Christina Ferris. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am in this graduate program. This is my 4th semester at Ball State. I am a registered behavior technician, and I work with clients from ages 2 to 8 diagnosed with autism. I work in home, in school, and in clinic. I exercise about 3 times a week. I mostly run long distance, and I also attend yoga classes and lift weights.
Hi, my name is Lauren Tepp. I am 26 years old, and I am a special education resource teacher living in Indianapolis, Indiana. I work with children with all different kinds of learning disabilities and even on the autism spectrum. I work out probably 3 to 4 times a week. I like to go take classes such as Pilates or even Zumba classes, but I also like to take walks on those days that I don't get to the gym.
Hi, my name is Maya. I am 25 years old. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Currently, I am a classroom behavioral therapist working in an autism center, working with adolescents ranging from ages 14 to 22. I work out about 2 to 3 times a week in the form of running outside or working out in the gym.
Hi, my name is Skylar. I'm 24 years old. I am a full-time RBT. I work in an autism clinic. I work currently with a lot of kids from 2 to 22 years old. A lot of kids are on the spectrum. A lot of kids have specified behavioral challenges. My current activity is anything that the kids do, but when I'm not with the kids, I like to go to the gym, lift weights, walk my dog, and occasionally run.
Okay. I am going to start our presentation, so 1 second. Okay, the study that we chose to replicate is titled Internet-Based Contingency Management Increases Walking in Sedentary Adults, and that was conducted by Curdy and Dallery in 2013. We just completed our introductions, and the group members again are Austin, Christina, Lauren, Maya, and Skylar. What was replicated? So the study that we chose to replicate utilized the internet-based intervention to increase walking in 12 adults. Research indicates that the majority of the adults do not engage in enough physical activity, and there is a need to increase walking steps on a daily basis. The study was found to be successful, and the intervention was used to increase walking in adults actually worked, and ultimately their steps increased.
Some of our supporting literature in a systematic review by Patterson and Warburton, 2010, results showed exercise training interventions, particularly resistance and aerobic training interventions with older adults, yielded an improvement in functional and psychological areas. Results also showed that mobility disabilities were reduced and that there were a correlation increased rates of physical activity with better cognitive functioning and a reduced risk of dementia.
Another supporting article that we found brings awareness to the fact that physical activity is not only important for one physically, but it actually significantly affects one's health. High blood pressure, heart disease, and heart failure can affect one's health if they are not physically active. The study evaluated adults walking about 10,000 steps a day using a pedometer. And actually the results concluded that the required walking steps actually decreased blood pressure in all of the participants.
In a study done by Siebling et al. 2012, a comparison was done of a questionnaire and an activity monitor to look at the validity and reproducibility of questionnaires in assessing physical activity in older adults. They used a longitudinal aging study, Amsterdam Physical Activity Questionnaire. That questionnaire was compared with an activity monitor called the Triaxial Accelerometer SenseWear Pro. In that study, the results showed that the questionnaire actually underestimated physical activity and is not an accurate way of measuring physical activity in older adults. The study showed that activity monitors have higher validity compared to questionnaires in measuring physical activity.
The supporting literature that I reviewed was a study by Irvine et al. So this study discussed new technological developments, and because of these advances in technology on computers and mobile devices, there are multiple options for people now when it comes to individualized physical activity interventions. So the study I reviewed is similar to the original study by Curdy and Dallery, because it included older adults who are sedentary, and these adults may have functional limitations due to their age or medical conditions. Research from this study by Irvine was also based on the theory of planned behavior. This theory focuses on how an individual's attitude toward a behavior, social norms, and self-efficacy are what lead to behavioral intention and change. Recent research has also focused more on these interventions based on this particular theory and how they produce significant effects on behavior in web-based interventions.
So the overall purpose of the study was to determine whether an internet-based intervention would be useful in increasing walking steps in the 5 participants in this study.
There were a total of 5 participants in our replication. This included 4 females and 1 male. Our ages ranged from 24 to 34. All of us participants are students in an online graduate program. It's important to note that we spend several hours a day seated due to completing homework, assignments, projects, certification hours. But we also have the opportunity to engage in physical activity at our place of work because most of us work directly with clients with autism. We collected data by putting on a step tracking device in the morning and moving our bodies throughout the day, and then posting our step count and activity log each night before going to bed. This occurred 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, over the course of 5 weeks. All of us discussed how we were interested in improving our overall health and increasing our daily steps before starting the study. It's important to note that we communicated online prior to the study. However, none of us knew each other or met each other in person and live in different areas of the US. This study took place wherever we took steps throughout the day, which may include where we live, where we work, areas in our community, or places we have traveled to. So now I'm going to go over the materials that we used for the study. 3 different devices were used among the participants, which included the Fitbit Blaze, the Fitbit Charge, and the Apple Watch. So Lauren and I used the Fitbit Blaze, Skylar and Maya used the Apple Watch, and Austin used an Charge HR Fitbit to track our steps. It was also required that we had access to a computer or a phone to access YouTube. This was the case for Google Docs as well. You could use the application on a smartphone, or you could use the website on a computer. We try to make it as feasible as possible by recording a video through YouTube and then simply sharing the link to the table on our Google document. Other technology required depended on our choice of reinforcement when meeting our step goal. So this could include any device with a screen, such as a phone, TV, or iPad. Now I'm going to go over how we define stepping in our operational definition. For the purpose of this replication, stepping was defined as the lifting and setting down of one's foot or one foot followed by the other to achieve walking at a fair pace from location to location or moving to a different position in the environment. Examples of this include walking, running, skipping, or jogging while never having both feet off the ground at the same time. There are also non-examples, which include jumping up off the ground with both feet and landing in a different spot or position, lifting one's foot off the ground to take a step, but instead putting the foot back in place without taking steps. Also, non-examples may include waving arms or clapping.
Our data was collected through the use of wearing our Fitbits or Apple Watches in some cases. So at the end of the day, we would record the number of steps that we found or that showed up on our Fitbits or Apple Watches, and we put that in a Google Doc. So we all had access to that document, and we put the number of steps in there. We also recorded a YouTube video at that each night and inserted the link into that table as well. We also added into that table what physical activity we did that day. And now we will show a video of what we recorded on YouTube.
12,468 steps.
Okay, and the design for our graphs was a changing criterion design. And this was used for us to show our step goals in each of the blocks of our study. Our first was a baseline, and then we had 4 blocks after that, or 4 5-day periods. In this study, participants were required to exceed a goal on at least 3 of the 5 days to advance to a higher goal. So with this contingency, there were 2 rest days per block. And if there were days where samples weren't taken, as in someone didn't wear their Fitbit or were not able to record their daily steps for that day, then that was noted as not making the goal for that day.
For baseline, data collection occurred in 5-day blocks. This started on Monday and ended on Friday. On the first day of data collection, the participant attached electronic step tracking devices to their wrists from the time they get out of bed in the morning to the time they went to bed at night, with the exception of sleeping and water activities. Baseline data was collected for 5 days to yield a reliable estimate of daily steps walked. During this phase, the participants went about their day and made no changes to daily exercise routine. For example, participants were informed not to begin a new exercise regime during baseline data collection because we really wanted to get an accurate assessment of what we were doing on a day-to-day basis before intervention phase. Participants continue with their regularly scheduled activities day by day. Every night before midnight, the participants were asked to submit a video of their step total for that day. Setting criterion and meeting goals. The starting goals for participants were decided after baseline data was calculated. For example, a participant walks an average of 5,000 steps in the first block of data collection. On baseline, the first goal for step increase would need to meet or exceed 5,001 steps. If a participant met a 5-day goal criteria, his or her new goal was either to exceed the 4th highest step count from the previous block, or a 1,000 step increase beyond the goal of the previous block. Another example is if our participant walked between 3,501 and 4,000 steps per day for at least 3 days during this block, his or her next goal would be 4,500 steps. Each block required 3 data points to be at or above the criterion line in order to progress to the next goal. If the participants had less than 3 data points above the criterion line, then they were required to reset the goal from the previous block. If the steps taken were less than the criterion set for increase and the 4th highest data point was less than the criterion set, the participant's step goal was reduced in order to achieve a more obtainable goal. Step counts were assessed over 5-day blocks. Participants were required to meet or exceed the goal posted on the table on the Google document on at least 3 out of the 5 days to advance to a higher goal. Participants were able to advance to a new goal once the 5-day block goal criteria is met. The new goal was to either exceed the 4th highest step count from the previous block or 1,000 step increase beyond the average step count of the previous block. If participants met the express goal, they were able to earn access to screen time. The duration of screen time corresponded to the goal set at the beginning of the block. For example, if participants earned 7 minutes of screen time if they met their goal of 6,000 to 6,999 steps expressed at the beginning of the block. If choosing not to use 1,000 steps to increase, the formula used for the 4th highest step goal was Km plus L minus W, where M equals 5. For our replication, the reinforcement decided among the participants was minutes earned for screen time. Each individual was rewarded with the ability to watch a referred screen, which could have been an iPhone, iPad, television, projector, such as watching a movie, utilizing an iPad, or playing a favorite video game. Once participants successfully submitted a video of their device displaying a step count that met or exceeded the designed goal, 30 minutes of screen time was rewarded. Participants also received an additional 20 minutes of screen time for every activity log submitted to the Google document during baseline data collection. For intervention, participants received 5 minutes of screen time if they uploaded an activity log to the end of the day. If participants failed to meet their step count goal for that day or did not post the video, no screen time was rewarded for the day.
Okay, next we're going to talk about IOA and treatment fidelity. The IOA was collected by documented and assigned group member step counting data through the videos mentioned prior, shared via YouTube. Once the videos were uploaded, they were then checked by a team member to ensure accuracy. And then inter-observer agreement was presented visually by plotting the measures obtained by the secondary observer on a graph of the primary observer's daily activity log. Also, treatment fidelity. The strategies used to determine treatment fidelity were used to monitor and enhance accuracy and consistency of the intervention included, which included charging the device each night, making sure that the device was charged and ready to go the next day, so wearing the device throughout the day and not taking it off. And also, once the day was over, actually documenting the amount of steps per night.
Looking at my graph here, my steps were not consistent throughout all the blocks. I met criteria 1, 2, and 3, but was not able to meet criteria 4. So I stayed at criteria 3 for that last block. There was also days that I was sick and did not achieve 2,000 steps. If you look at day 20, day 8, I was sick, and day 20, I did stay home. But other days I was very busy at work, or I was playing a game of kickball, which happened on day 2, which after school with some kids that I work with, I got involved in a pretty intense game of kickball and ended up walking and obtaining 14,000 steps that day. But overall, I did not feel the intervention was successful for me because my obligations for work in school were more important than the reinforcing screen time that I was to receive if I had met my goal.
So my graph shows in baseline, my steps were actually decreasing. And my whole graph is pretty variable and is a sawtooth formation. In the first criterion, which is blocks 2 and 3, I only have 2 data points above the criterion line because those were only the 2 days, Monday through Friday. Those were the only days I worked out. Therefore, I had an increase in steps those days. And then the decrease in steps are the days I took off and did not go to the gym. I did not meet criterion until the 4th block, where I had 4 data points above the criterion line. And then I slowly increased steps toward the end of the study, but I still had that sawtooth formation because of my rest days after my workout days. I do not feel like the intervention worked for me, as the graph shows, because screen time was not an effective reinforcer for me. I did not have the time, most of the time, to reward myself with screen time, such as TV or a movie. And I also did not record the duration I spent on my phone because social media is reinforcing for me, but I did not record the time spent on social media as well as the time I spent texting or calling people.
As you can see, I did meet all the criterion for this experiment. My baseline data averaged about 7,000 steps. But as you can see, though, in criterion 1, all of my steps were above that new goal. And that's just simply because I was out of town on vacation and I had more time to walk and do activities such as that. And then the rest of the time, as you can see, it goes up and down a lot just because there's some days where I would work out and then other days I wouldn't. And being a teacher, not in school, it's hard to get all the steps that I normally would if I were walking around the school building every day. But it does show that I did find this to be a successful experiment, except I do think that if it were during the school year, it might show more success and my steps might be show a better trend of increasing.
So if you take a look at my graph, my baseline starts at an average about 7,000 steps for the first block of days. I was able to continue to move up in the criterion. My first criterion was set at 7,100 steps, and I was able to achieve that by walking more or equaling 7,100 steps. I was able to do that for each of the weeks except for in criterion 4. I did not meet the specific requirements. The trend is looking a little wonky. It seems pretty variable. There's a lot of outliers. For example, the last data point in criterion 1 was way skyrocketed up. I think the intervention worked for me. I was able to continue to increase my steps every single week. And I was able to achieve new criterion each week.
Okay, so this is a table that shows each participant's weekly averages of steps and then the ranges of steps that they took each week. It starts with the baseline and then it goes from block 1, block 2, block 3, and block 4. Just by looking at it, it's interesting to see the range of steps. For example, like in the baseline, the biggest range of steps was about 2,500 to about 11,000 steps. And then it just continues to show different increases like that. Like in block 4, the range for Austin was about 1,500 steps to about 11,500 steps. So it's just interesting to see the range of steps and then the average is that everybody walked throughout the weeks of the experiment.
So the next slide is a day in the lives of us, the participants. I walked up and down stairs and throughout the school building at work and walked around the supermarket shopping, just doing some grocery shopping. I try to go and get, fresh vegetables and different things after work if I can. I do a lot of my exercising on the weekend after going and working all day, 8 or 10 hours. It's difficult for me after doing schoolwork to go out and take a run. So that's pretty much my my weekdays and weekends.
So normal weekday for me consisted of walking around with my clients, jumping on the bounce house at our clinic, and running around with my clients if we were playing chase. The days I did work out, I either ran outside or went to the gym to attend a yoga class or a strength class or run on the treadmill.
A typical day for me, since I'm not in school, would be trying to get some sort of walk-in of some kind. So taking a walk with my husband around the neighborhood, or even playing with my puppy at home or in the backyard. That helped me earn some steps. And then also trying to take different classes at the YMCA, such as like aerobics or Zumba classes and things like that.
My day consisted of walking my dog to retrieve steps, also walking around my apartment complex, just taking a walk after work, and also walking throughout the building at work was helpful. I found the majority of my steps were obtained walking with my clients throughout the building as well as in the community setting. Actually, Mondays, I felt like I achieved the highest rate of step goals due to being in the community with my students. So that was very helpful for me.
A day in the life of Skylar is very much work-oriented. I walk around with my clients a lot. I walk up and down the different flights of stairs. Most days we walk to and from the playground or to and from the gym. A lot of my steps were obtained from actually playing the gross motor games my clients are playing, such as Ships versus Sailors or Red Light, Green Light. To achieve more steps during the day, I walked my dog or went to the supermarket. So, did it work? Was there a functional relationship? The simple answer is no, the intervention was not successful, especially not successful for many of the participants. Lauren and Skylar were the only two participants to achieve an increased goal step each block of the intervention. Lauren and Skylar were both unable to increase their daily step in the last block of the intervention. Austin's goal step was actually decreased because he did not meet the criteria to increase having 3 or more days above criterion, or having the 4th highest goal step actually be less than his criterion. Christina and Maya both seem to be pretty stuck at the first set of the intervention, but seem to really get on track towards the end. So overall, it was an unsuccessful, not working intervention. So what went wrong? We found many things went wrong with our intervention. Our first thing that we noticed was that our reinforcement used to motivate our participants was very weak. The study that was replicated had a universal reinforcer like money. Finding a reinforcer that fits 5 different people who live all around the United States was very difficult because we also needed to have the access to that reinforcer. A lot of us have that intervention, or I'm sorry, they have that reinforcement of that phone and that screen. So we were able to better keep up with, this is what we're working towards. This is a universal item everyone has. Technology is something that we use all day, every day, but during the summer, it's usually not something that we use. And being in class and being a grad student and working full time, starting a movie that we earn 50 minutes of doesn't really seem motivating, because 50 minutes in, there's could be a great part, and I don't know a lot of people that have the self-control that want to pause that movie and stop it. I feel like in the summer there's also a lot of time to go to the pool or do different activities that don't require walking and that don't really want to motivate you to take more steps and get out and about. One of our big limitations was our use of our technology. Each participant used a different pedometer device, and while the tracking is similar, they're not the same. I noticed that with both my Fitbit that I've had a few years ago and my Apple Watch now, is that when I use my Fitbit, it would count clapping as steps. So my steps would increase if I was clapping. An Apple Watch tracks movement from when you move the elbow, so they seem to be a little more advanced. Technology also doesn't know what activity you're doing, so they just feel the movements that are required to go, and so technology doesn't know if you're jumping, if you're clapping, if you're marching. It only detects that movement. A big limitation in many studies is we're human. People who are not often wearing a watch or jewelry have a hard time getting into the routine of putting that watch on. So people forget. There are storms, power goes out. Sometimes Bluetooth doesn't get turned on, so steps are not tracked. Daily steps that were reported could have been due to a lot of factors. Many participants reported that their watch was dying before they had the ability to upload their video. Bluetooth was not connected for a few of the participants, and charging the watch, people forget. Your dog steps on it, it gets knocked off. It's hard to keep it on there. The study allowed to have a grace period or a rest period. However, being human, we get hurt, we get sick, and we don't have the ability to continue to reach our limits. If someone hurts their foot, if someone can't leave their bed, it's hard to take steps to meet that criteria. Another limitation we found was the internet management system that we used was not really conducive to our study. Curdy and Dallery used the secure system of Motivate, which was a very user-friendly login website to upload all of their stuff at once. Our group used Google Docs and Blackboard and YouTube, and there were a lot of moving pieces to get everything involved. So if a participant has to take off their watch, videotape it, put it to YouTube, upload everything, copy the link, it kind of takes away the motivation and the reinforcer to want to upload your steps, versus the participants in the study that we replicated had everything on one screen. Another limitation we found was our physicality was much different than the participants that we replicated the study with. The study we replicated used older sedentary adults. So they took less than an average of 6,000 steps. And actually, Curdy and Dallery did not include participants that took an average of 6,000 steps or more. In our case, yes, we are students. Yes, we do sit a lot. However, we're younger, we're healthy, and we live an overall more active lifestyle than the average 50-year-old. Although the intervention used failed, having a busy lifestyle could have contributed to the lack of steps taken in our data. For example, most physical activity allowed for the time was walking in a center with a client versus taking the time to work after work to get those steps. A lot of the times we're busy, we have to go home to our families, and it's hard to okay, I have to take 7,000 more steps. Well, that could mean an hour-long walk. So a lot of the time that was dedicated to the study could have been taken by having that busy lifestyle. Another limitation that we considered was the weather and the safety of our participants. I'm in Kansas, and the weather is very unpredictable. We have ozone warnings and layers all of the time. Kansas weather tends to go from super, super hot to raining for 3 or 4 or 5 days. So even though we could have made our way to the gym, it's not safe to drive in hurricane-like conditions. No, there are no hurricanes in Kansas. However, it may feel like it some days. being safe was one of our top concerns as well. Like we've talked about before, another limitation was time. We tracked our steps Monday through Friday, which could have resulted in less steps taken than on a Saturday or a Sunday. Participants reported that they were less busy on the weekend and had more time to dedicate to activities that were not seated or sedentary like. We're going to talk about our personal limitations next.
One of my personal limitations is only counting steps on the weekdays was the biggest one for me. After working like an 8-hour day, 10-hour day, having schoolwork to do, I had limited time to go for runs, to exercise. I have more time for that on the weekends because I don't have to work those 8 or 10-hour days because I only work Monday through Friday. And probably the second one for me, personal limitation, would be it's been an especially hot summer, so I probably have not been exercising as much as I do during other seasons.
So my limitations included my schedule changing. So getting off work later was tough for me. It was hard to find the motivation to work out after work because I would get off around 6:30 and I would still need to go home and do homework and eat dinner and whatnot. I also tended to take rest days after my workout days. So I would run a lot one day and achieve my step goal and then not run the next day. And I would also do my long runs on the weekends. I don't think reinforcement was effective because I did not normally have time to watch TV during the week. And I also didn't record my phone usage because I'm on my phone so often to answer texts and calls. I also had my Bluetooth off and I fell asleep early on 2 occasions where I didn't have a chance to post my videos. And then because my Bluetooth was off, the step count did not transfer to the app. Luckily, I was able to access it via the Fitbit website. So that's how I got my video for those 2 days. And that's all for my limitations.
Okay, as far as my limitations go, the major one is that since I'm a teacher, I was off for summer vacation during the studies, so I was not able to get as many steps as I would if I would have been walking around the school building. So it was harder for me because I had to find time to, take the steps needed. So I would try to take walks daily or go to exercise classes daily. But I also know like there was a time that I forgot to wear my Fitbit for a day. So that was in the baseline data. So I wasn't able to obviously log the steps for that day. And then it's just hard to remember to post the videos each night. There were a few times where I had to go back and post the videos onto the Google Doc or data table, the next day or another time during the week, just because of all the different steps needed to post it onto that Google data table that we all created together.
Some of my limitations were a lack of motivation after a long day of work. Sometimes it was just really hard to obviously do the steps that I retrieved at work, and then along with that, adding more steps by either going to the gym or going for a run after that long day. As well as during this study, my kids at work, they had about 2 separate weeks off throughout the study, which actually gave us some time to take a break from work. So it's really nice to have that break, but it was also very challenging for me to balance between enjoying having a break, but still needing to meet the acquired step goals, which means going to the gym or going for a run outside or anything just to remain active and meet that step goal. Also, the reinforcement was not as motivating for me. I don't normally have as much time to sit and watch TV or watch a movie, so the lack of motivation for the reinforcement was a huge one. I also realized that when I wore my watch in the gym setting for that day, if I was just doing lifting weights or something of that nature, the steps actually weren't recorded. They were recorded, but it didn't seem like I achieved as many steps by just doing. And while lifting, I was still moving my feet, still moving around. So I thought that was also a limitation too. It didn't really add to my total step count.
A few limitations for me is I'm going to blame the weather. It's crazy here. Often my watch would die before I had the opportunity to actually take the video. It could have been my increased phone usage, meaning there are some days where I get more text messages or phone calls and they're directly linked to my watch. So using more of my watch could have drained the battery. I also found that the motivation behind the reinforcement wasn't really helpful. I have a family at home, so there were times where instead of just sitting down to watch an episode or watch a movie, I was doing something else and doing something else, trying to be more active. But we live in an apartment, so throwing the ball inside, reading a book. I was also sick for a few days, which limited my ability to take extra steps. So that could have affected the amount of steps that I took.
Did we identify any biases or human error? There was some human error involved, obviously, which every study is going to have human error, which does impact the data. So our common human error was forgetting to charge or wear the step tracking device. As you heard mentioned from a few of our participants, we might have forgotten to charge the device the night before. So the device wasn't ready to go the next day to track the steps. So that was definitely some human error on our part. And luckily, our group did not identify any biases within our study.
Okay, so in conclusion, the experiment conducted was not successful for all of our participants. For many of them, steps were not increased each week and even decreased in some cases. There were some times where participants had one or more weeks where they took more steps than in the following weeks. And this is probably all because we are college students and going about our daily lives and working and things like that. So it's hard to consistently increase our steps from week to week.
And here are our references, and that concludes our presentation. We would like to thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.